So, hello. Today, in this video, I'll talk about data classes and fields. So, these are the things that I first encountered in a Python library called FastAI. So, it's a deep learning library built on top of PyTorch. And in one of its scripts called basic train, um, they use something called data classes that I didn't understand. So I did some research, and the two sources I used were basically just talk on data classes um, in this Python conference in Israel and Python's official documentation. So let's start by looking at um, what a normal class looks like, right? So here we've defined a class called student. And so you can already see here, right, we are having a lot of data, a lot of fields that we're simply just collecting their values um, from the parameters of the init function and then assigning attributes, um, assigning those values to the attributes. And it's very tiring to write all this thing. And we have one custom method, which is graduate before a particular year, which compares this current year with the graduation year to see if this year is greater than the graduation year. So is there an easier way to do this? Well, so in Python 3.7, they started to include something called data class, right? So here's what it looks like when you're building this class student using this data class decorator. So let's first ignore this line right here. We first just focus on this bunch of code right below the class definition. So we can see we are defining the fields and their data type, right, without actually passing in the values. And you don't really see where exactly I'm going to pass in those values, but the catch here is the init function for all these attributes are generated automatically behind the scenes. So if we run this code and initiate a method called, oh sorry, this is my name, said it should be Xavier. Okay, so Xavier is when he's a freshman. He's age when freshman is 18, and email is xstudent@xuniversity.edu, and his phone is 12345678990, and his graduation year is 2022. So we can see here that we can we can already access the attribute values just like when we're using a class. And we can also test the repr function, the dunda repr function here, and it prints out the exact thing correctly. However, if we used the original traditional student class and did this, sorry, age when freshman is not defined. Okay, sorry. This should work. Okay, let's just run this, and let's run Xavier. Okay. So we can see that when we're actually just using the traditional class definition of student, the dunda repr method is not automatically generated. But in this case, when we're actually using the student class, the student data class, we can actually have a pretty good done the repr output, which we can easily read. And now let's just test, if this custom method work. Okay, so obviously Xavier has not graduated before 2019, and we can test the equal, done their equal to see the two Xaviers are actually the same. But if we're going to use the traditional class definition, actually, even we have this, the equal method is generated automatically even for the traditional class, but actually you can't generate these things here. And now let's talk about what this thing mean and what this thing mean. Okay, so here we're basically saying when you're generating this data class, we want you to do some special things, right? These are the parameters that determine what our data class end up being, right? So if we say, okay, we actually want the init function to be automatically generated, we want the done the repr to be generated, we want the done the equal to be generated, the comparison functions to be generated, to not be generated actually, and these things we don't care about these at the moment. So let's say if we say equal, we don't want to generate the dunder equal. So what happens? Okay, that's interesting. Okay, let's initiate something called Xavier2, which is exactly the same student. Okay, and we equal Xavier2. Not implemented, right? However, if we said equal equals true, we can actually compare those, right? And what's happening under the hood is comparing each of the attribute values to check if they match. But here's another interesting thing, right? We've also imported this thing called edit, undo delete cells. So we actually also import data from data classes, import field. And this is something we import from the data classes library, and we can basically it's similar to the parameters to the data class decorator. Here we are basically saying that we want this field to be included in the init function and not having it show up in the output of the repr function. And the basic reason for this is, maybe this phone number is a private information, so we don't want to print it out. Okay, so if this repr equals true, we can see that here the phone number of student Xavier is printed out. But if it's false, it's not printed out, right? So that's all for today's video. I will later upload this notebook so you guys can run some code examples. But basically, the parameters and the default values for the data class decorator and the field class are listed here. You can also refer to the Python official documentation on data classes if you have further questions or you would like something more detailed. Thank you.